Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. 19th to the 20th of December 1961. Ending of Dukkha. Need only one. Tape 1. In the Radha Sutta, SN 23-1, he asked the Buddha, what is called the king of death, Mara? The Buddha replied, form, rupa, Dhamma will kill you because you have to die as long as form exists. If you can contemplate the impermanence, anicca, of form as the king of death, that is beneficial. If you can't, it will kill you across many lives. If you can contemplate and lose interest in the king of death and its end, you have conquered the evil of kanda mara, the evil of kanda. Feeling, Vedana, is also the king of death, as a perception, mental formations, and consciousness, i.e., the other nama khandhas of sana, sankara, and vinanam. The 5 khandhas will kill someone who received them by prayers. Death from bodily stiffness is caused by the earth element, pathavi. Death from overflowing with urine and blood is caused by the water element, apo dhatu. Death from overheating by the fire element, and death with the body bloated and swollen by the air element, vaya. Dying while eating something that is not good, but perceived as good, involves the perception khandha, sana. Sayadaw continued it with each of the other khandhas. You'll not see the 5 khandhas as free from dangers. The killer is not far away from you. It's inside of you. The 5 khandhas always oppress, pilanata, beings without any pity. When you're alive, they ask you to do things for them, and you overwork yourself, which ultimately leads to your demise. This point is very good for contemplation by using the 4 meanings of dukkha and 4 meanings of its cause. Because all beings live with dukkha and samudaya all the time throughout their lives. Discerning anicca is seeing the Dhamma which kills you. Only then will you shun away from it. You're freed from death only by discerning the dukkha sakka. You have to truly seek liberation from death, but most people are looking for deaths. They are looking for the killers or murderers to kill them, i.e., to acquire khandhas, quite stupid indeed. Not only do they not see the khandhas as enemies, but they also care for them, quite foolishly. For the insight practitioner, I am breaking you down into pieces. In samatha practice, they are still looking for the killers to kill them. Thus, they do not attain nibbana. We cannot transcend the dukkha sakka without seeing nibbana. Success can only come by thoroughly understanding dukkha sakka. To be freed from death, you have to kill the khandhas, but throughout the whole of samsara, you have been killed by them. Tape 2. Whatever prayers of becoming, bhava, are inviting the king of death, even nearly all Buddhists, not only the later Buddhists. You are living together with the 5 khandhas of the 5 kings of death. The form, rupa, khandha oppresses you before death. The worst is at dying. When contemplating form, rupa, it can be used as a template for the dying Dhamma and oppressive Dhamma. People are asking about the causes of death, such as, what kind of feeling, Vedana, eating something which is not right, sana, etc. There are people who die while traveling, i.e., sankarakanda, unable to control the mind, vinanam, because of suicide. People are praying for the khandhas, by making merits, with kamasava, bhavasava, and avijjasava, i.e., taints of lust, becoming, and ignorance. Don't desire the khandha and invite the king of death. Near death, they are crying and calling for help. Oh, help me. You don't need to be afraid of killing you but of bhavatana, craving for becoming. You have to accept dukkha sakka by practicing samudaya sakka. Pushing you from behind are asava and the killers are the 5 khandhas. Do you want to become a corpse inside someone's mouth, as an animal, or want to become a corpse in the ground? Whatever way we talk about it, it comes to anicca. There are 40 ways to talk about the 3 characteristics. If you can discern anicca, you will gain the knowledge of the way as it is, yathabhuta nana. Continue toward the knowledge of disenchantment, nibbida nana. Continue to meditate with the contemplation until you no longer want it, and in this way, the 5 aggregates disappear. Then you find the undying place, nana, crossing into the side of undying. Try to find it out. Encouragement and guarantee. I am giving you the method. From the dying element, it is crossing into the undying element, nibbana. The place of undying arises and let nana stay there. Don't look for the place of cessation. The cessation of dukkha is only this much because it's still not yet. Conquer the khandha, mara, i.e., the evilness of the khandha. Examine it with the reviewing knowledge, pakavekkhana nana. If you attain it with a lot of examination and it stays with the cessation of dukkha, nirodha. Seeing the inconstant is insight knowledge, and seeing nibbana is path, fruit, and reviewing knowledge respectively. With the first path knowledge, ditthi kilesa and ditthi khandha vanish. Sayadaw's use of Dhamma words or phrases is very precise and good for contemplation. Reducing 1/4, of kamasava, bhavasava, and avijjasava respectively. The axle of ditthasava is totally or wholly breaking down and can't revolve anymore, totally stopped. Therefore, a stream enterer will never fall into a pyre forever. With the second and third path knowledge, the axle of kamasava is totally broken down, and with the fourth path knowledge, bhavasava and avijjasava are broken down. Now, you all are complete with upanissayapakayo, decisive support condition, having the 3 wholesome roots of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, i.e., tihetuka person, having the potential for enlightenment. For the liberation from the 3 rounds of existence, 3 vata, try to do the path condition, maggapakayo. You have enough 23 conditions and are only left with the maggapakayo. This point is very, very important. To give an example, an analogy, all food, 23 conditions, is ready. You only need salt, maggapakayo. So don't become a foolish Buddhist. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. 23rd to the 25th of February 1962. The Oppressor of Beings. These talks are based on the Mahapunama Sutta, No. 109, Majjhima Nikaya. Tape 1. Sayadaw told the story of the Mahapunama Sutta, the reason behind the senior monk asking the Buddha of the question which he had already known was wanting to get the confirmation for the other monks. What are these 5 clinging aggregates rooted in? They come from craving and desire, tanha and chanda. In past lives, we clung to the khandhas with desire that now we get it and they do not arise by themselves, not by God, no such being exists. Let's explain the clinging khandha, upadanakhandha, and non-clinging khandha, anupadanakhandha. If you cling to it, it becomes clinging khandha, and with non-clinging, it becomes non-clinging khandha. I am going to explain it in general. For example, when feeling, vedana, and attachment, upadanam, are mixed, it becomes the feeling aggregate, vedanupadanakhandha, affected by attachment. Mixing them is not beneficial. Upadanam is neither the same as the khandha nor is upadanam something apart from the khandha. There are 2 khandhas, one with clinging is clinging khandha and one with non-clinging is non-clinging khandha. Without a good teacher you may not understand this. With clinging, you are bound by tanha, upadanam, and kama. With no clinging, tanha, upadanam, and kama cease. These are variances due to different people. If there is clinging, it becomes the clinging khandha. If there is no clinging, it becomes the non-clinging khandha. It is like an ox and the rope. There are two clinging khandhas related to happiness and unhappiness. For example, the difference is that if one is healthy, it becomes the aggregate of attachment to happiness, happy clinging khandhas. If it is unhealthy, it becomes the unhappy clinging khandhas. People pray for heavens with the desire for the clinging khandhas. This way does not lead to nibbana. Only the becoming of non-clinging khandha attains nibbana. The clinging of khandha forbids nibbana, and non-clinging of khandha supports nibbana. Note: it's beneficial for contemplation on clinging khandha and conceptual khandha, non-clinging khandha, and non-conceptual, paramatta, khandha. Do they have any relationship between or among them? According to Sayadaw U. Kandima's experiences, to penetrate the ultimate, paramatta, khandha, the mind has to be purified first, through samadhi practice. Only by achieving the fourth jhana samadhi power can one discern the mind. You have to be aware of that point. Clinging Dhamma is oppressing the world. Ayuanatta, ayuhana atta, tanha, craving creates dukkha things and matters. A person with the clinging khandha is able to live only with dukkha. This can be directly seen in today's world, which is becoming chaotic with conflicts, destruction, and disasters in many sectors. With only dukkha, they have satisfaction. If they separate from dukkha, they can't live on and become dissatisfied. They are only satisfied when busy with things and matters. Sayadaw's many talks contribute a lot of Dhamma insights into human minds and their nature. The senior monk continued to ask the Buddha, how many kinds of khandha are there? There are various kinds, e.g., many kinds of animals. These are from the external forms. Then he asked about Sakkaya Ditthi. You must separate Sakkaya Ditthi as before. Some have Sakkaya only and no Ditthi, and some have both of them. The differences stem from sattva and asattva, with learning and without learning from the wise, especially Dhamma from the Buddha. The most important point is the differences between Ariya and Pathujana, noble being and worldling, wise and fool. Tape 2. At the time of contemplation of Vedana, the process should be with one feeling and following with one knowledge, etc. Tanha, mana, and ditthi will cease by contemplating with one of the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. One of the monks among the listeners is thinking that all is becoming anatta and there is nothing to rely upon. If all the five khandhas become anatta, what is there to claim as mine? Kama follows beings all the time, so he takes kama as atta. You have to be careful about this point. Many Buddhists take kama as atta, such as kam mother and kam father. Kam is the short form of kama in Burmese, relying on kam as a mother and father, and kam is my property, etc. Kama is a mental formation, sankhara, or volition, satana. The Buddha taught, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, all phenomena are non-self. Even though people make kama as atta, this is self-view, atta ditthi, in Buddhism, on kama. Kama following behind means it has the nature of stability. This is taken as the method of Suttanta and not the method of Abhidhamma. It becomes the nature of the preceding phenomenon not to cease, nor does the following one. This is teaching with examples and not directly. If the monks are not teaching him separately, all lay people will take it wrongly. I myself had misunderstood them before I knew the Mogok teachings. Kama becomes Sakkaya Ditthi and Sasata Ditthi, identity and permanent views. Teaching with examples and it's easy to know them, but taking it directly becomes wrong. People take the examples and similes as real. This teaching is for the knowledge of Kama Sakata Nana. With this Nana, you can't arrive at Nibbana. Here we know the importance of Abhidhamma teachings to understand more clearly about the Suttanta teachings. I have never seen anyone who knows Abhidhamma becoming stupid. Only the opposite is possible. After the Kama and Nama Rupa here are ceased and next Nama Rupa are arising there, i.e., after death and rebirth process. The Nama Rupa here can't follow to there. Tape 3. The senior monk asked the Buddha, how can one contemplate so that Sakkaya Ditthi falls away? You must contemplate the 5 khandhas as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Among the monks, there is a man who seeks pleasure and something to rely on in the places of becoming, bhumi bhava, Burmese, bhava. Thus, he took satana kam as a refuge. He finds pleasure in the realms of kama that rely on karmas. He regarded kama as permanent, sasata ditthi, due to ignorance, avidya, and craving, tanha, that depend on kama. Near death, living beings cling to anything. At that time, they rely on the wholesome merits they had previously earned, which send them to good destinations, sugati. These conditions are also not very safe because near death, it is difficult to determine what kind of mind state arises. This does not lead to nibbana. For those who do not know the truth, sakkas, one must rely on merit to teach them. Practitioners must contemplate their khandhas and die with knowledge. Therefore, the Buddha instructed Bhikkhu Phaguna, see Anguttara Nikaya, AN 656, in this manner. Near death, one could become a Sotapanna to an Arahant. Phaguna became an Anagami, and not connect to becoming bhava. Yesterday, I didn't end the talk. Today, I want to talk about it. It's very important. Near death, the best approach is discerning impermanence or the ending of it, i.e., anicca. If you have sasata ditthi and sakkaya ditthi, they never fall away. The Buddha wanted to strip off the monks' wrong view and asked the monks in the form of questions and answers for insight practice, such as, is form, rupa, permanent, nikka, or impermanent, anicca, etc. At last, all the monks benefited from the instruction. The Buddha was teaching on the 3 characteristics again for this one monk. Actually, when the Buddha taught about tanha, mana, and ditthi falling away, but because of this one monk, the Buddha had to restart it again. I have told you very often that the ending of the khandha is nibbana. Only when you can uncover the 2 coverings that conceal the khandha, will you find nibbana. First, avidya and tanha cover up the khandha. When you uncover it, anicca sankhara dukkha covers it again. After you follow to the end of anicca, and no desire of the dukkha, nibbana arises. Nibbana is near and becomes far away because you do not know how to uncover things. Firstly, you have to strip off ignorance and find out the khandha, and then you must contemplate it until you desire it no longer, becoming disenchanted with the khandha. When you no longer desire it, then nibbana arises. It's true that nibbana exists at the end of the khandha. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 27th of February 1962. Humans looking for unreliable. Living beings in the whole of samsara were looking for unreliable things and encountered a lot of sufferings. Mostly, beings rely on unwholesome dharmas and create a lot of unwholesome kamas. Consequently, their permanent places and rebirths are the 4 apayas. Therefore, the Buddha delivered this discourse without anyone's request, to establish reliability. He warned us, except for the Dhamma, do not rely on other things. If you don't rely on Dhamma, then dependent origination will turn around again at the end. See the 12 links in DA. Then it'll come back to the beginning, i.e., ignorance. From sorrow, lamentation, pain, and grief, etc., to ignorance. All the other things are unreliable, and you receive back these things. Sayadaw explained how beings rely on the 5 khandhas, each one of them. Why are you looking for something reliable? I want to cry. There are two types of reliable things, the wrong one and the right one. Sentient beings have been brought to tears countless times by unreliability. Even the Buddha mentioned it as beings shedding more tears in the round of existence than the water in the four great oceans. You are seeking the khandha, which inevitably leads to tears. If you do not pursue the next khandha, then you need not cry. All these issues stem from a misguided view, ditthi. The Paramatta Dharmas discuss their inherent nature, which causes your grief. True understanding, jnana, should arise when the Dharma reveals its real essence, and it often brings tears, such as when a family member passes away. These emotional responses originate from the unreliable nature of the khandhas. With correct understanding and reliance, Nibbana can be realized. This reliance is on the path factors. Tears begin with ditthi. Insight knowledge can temporarily extinguish sorrow, tadanga. Embracing the right path factors, both mundane and supramundane, Lokiya and Lokuttara maggas, leads to the permanent cessation of sorrow. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 10th of March 1962. Worldlings with wrong eyes and defiled minds. Here are two talks on wrong views on the same day. We're walking in the whole of samsara with the two eyes of miccha ditthi and miccha sankappa, i.e., deluded or blind eyes. Now, having encountered a good teacher, it's important to adopt the two eyes of samma ditthi and samma sankappa, i.e., wisdom eyes. Living with these two eyes will end dukkha. Without them, one wanders in samsara, sometimes in sugati, good destinations, and sometimes in dugati, bad destinations, mostly in apayas, which are our permanent homes. This is not a lack of perfections, paramitas, but rather due to the wrong eyes or blind eyes. They are fermented with taints of the wrong view, ditthasava. With people who have affections, they wish for them to survive, and with people they hate, they wish for them to die, i.e., Sasata and Akeda people, e.g., some politicians and Western superpowers. If a person is a good teacher, he must teach people how to worship the Buddha in purified ways and how to perform dana in untainted ways. This point is very important for Dharma teachers. Sayadaw taught what he himself has practiced in his whole life. Most teachers are lacking this quality. People who can cultivate pure merit are indeed very rare. In the Itavataka Pali, the Buddha made a distinction between Sasata and Akeda persons. If a teacher discusses Nibbana, the Sasata person does not like it. He is bonded by bhava tanna superglue, which modern scientists still cannot produce. He is attached to becoming bhava. If the teacher advocates for the cessation of bhava, he trembles. The Akeda person is wearied and disgusted by becoming and wishes it to be completely severed. Yet he does not desire Nibbana, nor does he want to face aging, sickness, and death. He prefers when nothing ever happens again. The Sasata person does not understand Dukkha Sakka and the Akeda person does not comprehend Nirodha Sakka. Only by recognizing anicca, moving away from these two erroneous views, does disenchantment follow, and with the cessation of desire for dukkha, nibbana arises. Ultimately, the person is liberated from Sasata and Akeda, fully understanding this knowledge. Therefore, the discourse on the discernment of anicca, its disenchantment, and its cessation is not trivial. The Sasata person believes in this life, the next life, and the consequences of actions, both good and bad. He is accustomed to performing meritorious acts and fears committing demerits. When taught about the outcomes of merits, he greatly appreciates it, making it difficult to abandon his view. Therefore, it is challenging to assist him, even upon encountering the Buddha. His fault is not very significant. there is a delay in his willingness to abandon his view. Teaching him is more difficult than teaching the Akeda person. He possesses strong tanha for clinging to the realms of existence. Even when he has the opportunity for liberation through meeting the Buddha, his response is sluggish. The fault of a Akeda person is significant yet easy to correct. It is important to recognize the differences between a greedy person, lobha, and a hatred person, dosa. He has significant faults regarding his view, but is easy to liberate. He also believes in bhava. His desire to cut off becoming, bhava, is complex. He believes in the results of merits and demerits, but is reluctant to perform meritorious acts. He prefers the extinction of bhava and, regarding demerits, is bold enough to commit them. Encountering the Buddha, it is easy for him to be liberated and abandon his views. The Akeda person is near Nibbana, while the Sasata person is far from it. The greedy person has no restraint in speech, talks actively, talks too much, while the Akeda person is terse and blunt. Inherently, both are flawed, due to ditthi. However, if the Akeda person has the opportunity to meet the Buddha or an Arahant, liberation comes easily. Proximity to Nibbana is their only superior aspect. The Sasata person does not understand dukkha sakka and craves bhava, while the Akeda person does not understand nirodha sakka and prefers to cut off bhava. Thus, both are far from Nibbana. Therefore, you must encourage the Sasata person to recognize dukkha as unstable and impermanent, which could lead to his liberation. Once the Sasata person acknowledges dukkha sakka, he will abandon his view. For the Akeda person, even if he recognizes dukkha sakka, he does not abandon his view until he reaches the cessation of it and his wrong view is finally discarded. A lack of understanding of the truth never frees one from ditthi. Thus, it is evident that wrong views obstruct the path, magga, and fruition, phala. Observe and contemplate the khandha with samadhi, recognizing that all it conveys is the truth of dukkha. Continuously watch and scrutinize the khandha from its arising to its cessation. Even if you derive pleasure from its arising, discerning its vanishing should negate that pleasure. If I have to give you an example, consider the matter of establishing a family life. You all have a short-sighted view about it, leading to long-term dukkha. You must identify the cause. It's an important point for Buddhists. Initially, it starts with tanha, and then it becomes clinging, upadana. Initially, you simply offered your hand to her. Now, both of you hold each other's hands very tightly. As it ages, it becomes more foolish, much like a lemon fruit that grows larger and sours. Do not trust each other's words when problems arise. All these are worldly speeches. Only someone with the wisdom eyes can strip off these two did this. Here, Sayadaw provided instruction on dukkha and asubha nature. He said that we do not understand these two natures because we have never considered the entire process from beginning to end. Initially, when they were young, men and women established families, but upon aging, many problems and difficulties arise. Compare this with the life of a monk, and it will be very clear. In Burmese, the word for establish a family also means a home prison. Similarly, when a beautiful young woman dies, her body undergoes changes, stage by stage, becoming ugly and disgusting. A reflection on what really exists and does not exist. In one of Mogok Sayadaw's talks, he discussed yathabhuta nana, as the reality and the knowing fit together, meaning you're discerning what really exists, but usually we see what does not exist. For an arahant who has perfect sati and panna, if he pays attention to the khandha, he understands the khandha burden very clearly. Thus, they want to cast off the khandhas forever. But worldlings are not like this. They see the impermanent khandha as an entity, dukkha as sukha, loathsome as beautiful. So, they are creating problems and difficulties all the time even without their knowing it. Some people can even take another person's life over a disgusting body. It was like two vultures fighting over a putrid carcass. The human body is a very coarse form, but the obsession with it is sometimes quite extreme. They are not only craving and clinging to the opposite sex, but also to the same sex, which is considered abnormal and unnatural. When human morals and virtues degenerate, unlawful lust and abnormal lust for the body form become extreme, mentioned in the Agana Sutta, DN 27. One of Ajahn Mun's senior disciples, Ajahn Lee Dharmadharo, reflected in his autobiography on what it would be like to have a family and then realized the dukkha that would follow him. He gave up the plan to have a family life and decided to continue with his practice as a monk. The book, The Autobiography of Fra Ajahn Lee, translated by Ajahn Thanissaro, is highly recommended. https://www.dharmatalks.org/archives/writings/ebooks/The Autobiography of Fra Ajahn Lee _181215.pdf. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 12th of March 1962. Our Great Mistake. This talk is based on a sutta in Khandha Vagga, Khandhasamyutta, Sutta No.122, SN 22-122. Virtuous Discourse. It's about questions and answers between Mahakotthika and Sariputta. Mahakotthika asked Sariputta, what are the things that a virtuous bhikkhu should carefully attend to? A monk should carefully attend to one of the 5 khandhas as impermanent, suffering, disease, a tumor, a dart, misery, affliction, alien, disintegrating, empty, and non-self, in 11 ways, to attain the path of the stream enterer. Sayadaw always emphasized the first magga in most of his talks. Nothing is more frightening than the 4 apayas of existence, especially hell existences. After the first magga, the upper maggas become easier and there is no need for a teacher for guidance. You'll respond to these as they are too much for attention. You don't have to contemplate all of them. If you combine all of them, they become the 3 universal characteristics. The yogi can choose any one of them that suits his nature and preference. This point is the knowledge of a teacher. Refer to him. At last, it leads to or transforms into anicca, rise and fall. It is becoming increasingly clear that even with the precepts, sila, there must be the right concentration or attendance. With more contemplation, it will lead to the truth, sakha. Having skill in one of them, factors, will finish the practice. Contemplating as an alien, parato, parajana, or stranger is quite good. Contemplative knowledge is one thing and rise and fall, anicca is another. They are talking about their natures. You must make the decision that it has nothing to do with me. When one's own khandha becomes alien and also other khandhas become strangers, it doesn't affect anyone. It's happening by itself and the I or me goes in and disturbs it so that it does not become an alien. If it does not become parato, alien, it becomes a tato, self, and a taniyato, my property. You go in and disturb it, which becomes unwise attention, ioniso. Why are you not becoming a stream enterer? You make an alien your own, and follow behind with the da. Process of dukkha, domanassa, etc. Now you have found out your fault. You make other property as yours and fall into apayas. It was like a watchman killed by robbers. It would have been better if the owner had been killed. It is quite painful to be killed without owning property. Here it is also the same as falling into apayas with other property. If you can contemplate only with the alien, it becomes equanimity, upekkha. It can develop to sankhara upekkha nana. After that path knowledge arises. The four lower realms, apaya, are such a person's own home, i.e., he considers the khandha as his own. Ditthi upadana, and action, kamma, governed by ditthi push individuals into these realms. Claiming an alien as one's own is the greatest mistake. Whatever merit you perform, the mind arises from the object and sense base, aramana and vara, and form, rupa, arises from kamma, chitta, uttu, and ahara, action, mind, temperature, and nutrient. In all these processes, nothing is created by oneself. Therefore, it becomes a crime, leading to falling into the apaya prison. Family members are related to each other as I and mine, without realizing that each one is a stranger to the others. Arguing strongly that others' property is one's own leads to clinging to the wrong view. Do not attribute falling into apaya to kamma. This is the cause of wrong views and clinging to them. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 13th of March 1962. A diseased body. The questions and answers between Mahakotika and Sariputta were for the future generations of people to learn from them and for practice. They had finished their tasks already. There was no need to or no reason for them to ask these questions for themselves. People listening to this talk must note down the way of the process and practice it. The worldling who arrives at the height has the habit of running towards a low direction. If you imitate low people or lowly things, you will fall down. Therefore, you have to imitate the upwards things and people. This talk was given to the couple who were very close disciples, U Chit Sui and Dor Ma Ma, at their home. Many talks given to them personally were only 30 minutes long or were short talks. Today, I'll talk about disease, rogato, roga. You'll recognize it by observing. Sitting too long makes the body tired. This is the khandha showing it to you. It manifests disease. You see dukkha sakha. If the khandha itches, disease arises. The khandha is showing you dukkha sakha. It's showing you its original nature. If you don't believe it, try pulling one of your head hairs and you will experience pain. Buddha Dharma is very practical and does not concern itself with superstitions and supernatural beliefs, like a belief in a God whom no one has seen before. These are diseases. If you see disease, it is seeing dukkha sakha. You have to contemplate it as rogato, etc. No contemplation, it is followed behind dukkha with domanassa. Worry and sorrow will follow you as, could I cross over the dukkha mountain? If disease arises, one will fall into apaya. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, etc. follows people who don't know about them. This will happen to you and others, i.e., family members. It's more painful by falling into apayas with over-concerns. It's like the modern love song, I love you more than I can say, just rubbish. Even if you don't love your parents who give you life. It's just cheating and lying to each other like politicians. Khandha shows dukkha sakha without realizing that both of them have fallen into apayas. If you want the disease, rogas, to go away, first understand the disease and lose interest in it. Therefore, at first practice to know about roga, and then follow with disenchantment and ending of it, you will arrive at security, kema of disease. If not, it's just only empty concerns and by accepting it falls to apayas. If you want to end your disease, you can't be concerned for others and also can't keep quiet. You have to discern about the disease. Having a good sleep also causes disease. Why? Because of sloth and torpor, which is an unwholesome mind. Changing the body this way and that way is also Roga. Keeping this thing and that thing is also Roga, etc. There are many things to mention about them. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 31st of March to the 4th of April 1962. On the Five Hindrances. The Bhavanga mind of the Khandha body, life continuum mind, is clear, but the hindrance of sensual desire, of wanting and desiring, comes in and becomes unclear. What one has learned and attended to before has disappeared or gone. Also, one is not seeing the things at the present, and there is no contemplation of the object of desire, karma aramana, with its anicca. So, the dependent origination process is going forward. It covers up the three universal characteristics and dukkha sakha. Sasana disappears, Buddha Dharma. This is the disappearance of the sasana. The Buddha Dharma easily disappears in the human world, because the majority of humans always consort with two evil friends, papamittas, which are dukkha and samadaya, instead of with two panditas, which are nirodha and magga. In daily life, humans becoming heedless, pamada, is consorting with papamittas, and with heedfulness, apamada is consorting with the wise, i.e., satipana. They don't see the existence of the phenomena that accept the hindrances. Even though it's greed, lobha, upadana and kama bhava also come in as companions. If lobha arises and with contemplation, it can't continue the DA process, because it conquers the hindrances. It was like in the Dhammapada verses. Someone with no anger conquers the one who has anger. Noble Dharma conquers evil Dharma, Papa Dharma. Sayadaw reminds or warns the disciples, Yu Chit Sui and Do Ma Ma. As businessmen and women sometimes they will be lost in business, but the most important thing is not to be lost to defilements, kilesa. The Buddha warns us in the Sakkasamyutta that 100,000 humans die, with no one arriving at good destinations after death. If you fall into apayas by kilesa even once, it's not easy to climb up again to good, sugati, destinations. This point is more important. Why are there more animals, pets and food animals, now than ever before? Where are they coming from? There are many kinds of pets. They have become great businesses and are out of control. When observing the pets, they seem more like humans. They come back to their family members and friends as pets. In my surroundings, there are more dogs and cats than humans. Aversion, bhayapada, is the inability to control one's mind. It is the Dharma that is not beneficial to oneself or others. The first thing that is harmed is oneself. The Buddha gave an example. It's similar to holding a hot iron bar and throwing it at someone. It's harming you first and will affect the other. It spoils the sila and samadhi dharmas. Ultimately, worry and remorse, kakaka, still can come in. Near death, one has worry and remorse for mistakes which had been done before. You have to be afraid of the basic cause of bhayapada. If there is no aversion, then worry and remorse do not arise. When people are getting old and searching for Dharma, these Dharmas, hindrances, forbid them. It forbids the path and fruit, magga and phala, but benefits the apaya Dharmas. Sloth and torpor, thina middha, has two kinds, related to lobha and dosa. Concerning oneself and going to sleep is related to lobha, greed. During the sleep, the bhavanga mind is involved in the breathing in and out. Lobha makes it easy to sleep, and dosa makes it slow to sleep. Sloth and torpor are more frightening than others. The reason is they are wasting away the time and opportunities or chances for the five dullabha dharmas, the difficult chances to come by. It prevents you from seeing anicca and is wasting your lifespan. Sayadaw talked about the difficulty of being born as a human and gave the simile of a blind sea turtle and a yoke with a hole. Wasting away things difficult to come by is akin to wanting to be poor, for suffering. It also opposes the time of sati, and therefore, it's the champion of the hindrances in the place of hindering path and fruit. It leaves you without sati. Failing to overcome your mind is the disappearance of cittanupassana. Not overcoming the mental state, cetasika, also leads to the disappearance of Vedana and Dhammanupassanas. It could lead to the disappearance of the 4 satipathanas, the Dhamma which makes the sasana Dhamma disappear. Sleeping time is a time for the disappearance of sasana. You were making prayers before to encounter the Buddha sasana. Now, it seems you're hiding from the sasana. You're hiding from the Buddha and the Dhamma. Sayadaw talked about how difficult it was to become a Buddha and that only after becoming a Buddha could he teach the Dhamma. There are misconceptions about Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among some Buddhists. Buddha and Bodhisattva are not God or avatars, which are the concepts of Hinduism. Otherwise, Buddhism becomes a samsaric vada, sasata vada. Sloth and torpor forbid the path and fruit, i.e., the wanting to sleep mind and sleeping mind, i.e., bhavanga mind, are making the sasana disappear. Consorting with sloth and torpor is associated with fools. Asavana ca balanam, not consorting with fools. If you associate with dharmas leading to apayas, hells, animals, ghosts' existences, you'll arrive there. This serious warning is very important for today's humans, because there are many problems and sufferings in many sectors of society up to international levels. Restlessness is the mind, uddhaka, not going where one intends for it to go. Getting hurt by tumbling down is not the cause of bad luck. If you can't achieve samadhi, the mind will incline towards restlessness, sloth, and torpor. It can even disturb the worldly matters of prayers. These minds are not staying with the objects but are going here and there. They oppose any good work and incline towards things which are not good. This point is very evident in today's world. Now, humans are more restless than before because of many unwholesome mediums. In the whole of samsara, living with uddhaka results in bad living and dying. It's a delusion of the mind, moha, that leads to mostly becoming animals after death. Observe the many kinds and great numbers of pets and animals for meat consumption. If you want to be freed from dangers and sufferings, don't go and ask astrologers. Instead, remove these obstacles. If restlessness comes in, I can't practice. It forbids samadhi and nibbana. Dukkha ananam, not knowing dukkha sakka. In the place of not knowing dukkha sakka, it's the leader. It urges you to wander among the 31 realms of existence. Avijja pakaya sankara, ignorance conditioning volitional formations, manifests as restlessness. Sayadaw talked about the 8 doubts concerning the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, one's own practice, and the DA process, from avijja to the end of soka, parideva, etc. Because doubts and wrong views arise, they often go hand in hand. With the wrong view, humans believe in many incorrect things and take refuge in them, whether worldly or spiritual. Being unable to make decisions by oneself is a sign of doubt. With doubt, visakicha, a person looks for a wrong view, ditthi, as a companion. With ditthi as a companion, one takes wrong refuges. Thus, it is certain they will fall into apayas. Even Buddhists, deluded and not knowing, search for wrong views. This can be observed from Theravada to Mahayanist perspectives. Searching for ditthi means looking for something to rely on. Doubt not only obstructs jhanas and nibbana, but also good destinations, sugatis. Therefore, it's very important to overcome this hindrance. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. 5th to the 7th of April 1962. The Five Rarities. These 3 talks based on a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fives. 1. The appearance of a Buddha in the world is a very, very rare thing or matter to come by. Most of the world systems are empty worlds, sunna kappa, with no appearance of a Buddha. There is only construction and destruction of many world systems. During these periods, no one knows how to cultivate goodness or practice jhana. Thus, there's no need to speak about the way to nibbana. Therefore, living beings were mostly in dugatas, i.e., apayas. Humans act blindly with wrong views, with most of them sinking into the downward paths of samsara. The doors to hells, animal, and ghost realms are opened for them. These things are created by their defiled minds and actions, not by God. 2. The presence of someone who can teach the Sakka Dharmas of the Buddha is also a very rare occurrence. For example, Ledi Sayadaw and Mogok Sayadaw, who were extremely rare among Dharma teachers. 3. For humans, the desire to listen to and understand the Sakka Dharmas is also a very difficult task, even among Buddhists. There are 3 ways to listen to the Dharma. 1. Normal way. 2. With contemplation. 3. Directly practice the Eightfold Path. Every Buddhist should listen to the Dharma up to the last stage of practice to benefit. All the Buddha Dharmas are meant for practice. Even though the Buddha does not exist anymore, the Dharma Buddha still exists. The Dharma is the real Buddha, as Buddha taught to the monk Vakali. You see Dharma and you see the Buddha. He became a Buddha through the Dharma. Everyone becomes a noble being, Arya, because of the Dharma. If we do not practice in accordance with the Dharma, then Buddhists are not his true children and are disobedient to him. Thus, we are without the sasana, just sinking in the downward samsara along with other faith followers. 4. Putting into practice according to the nature of Dharma is also a rare thing to happen. I.e., becoming Dhammanadhamapatipati. For example, when observing the khandhas, instead of seeing anicca, one only sees it as nicca, constant, which becomes only Dharma and not Dhammanadhamapatipati, not according to the nature of Dharma. Also, instead of dukkha, anatta, and asubha, they are seen as sukha, atta, and subha, and do not become anupatipati. You attain nibbana only if Dharma fits anupatipati. Dharma equals anupatipati. The number 4 point is the most important factor for the realization of nibbana. The first 3 factors in samsara could happen to most beings. This one may be the most difficult one to achieve. If the practice does not fit anu dharmapatipati, inversions, vipallasa, come into the practice. It becomes a wrong perception, knowing, and viewing, which are kilesas coming into the practice, and will not lead to attaining nibbana. Sayadaw gave an example of the practice of observing according to the Dharma. He said if dukkha vedana arises, one recognizes it as vedana and then observes its anicca. This is anupatipati. On the contrary, it is wrong to think of what happened to me as a feeling, or that this is how I feel. There are 3 points in contemplation: perceive as vedana, know as vedana, and contemplate it as anicca. These dharmas are very difficult to see and to know, so they are very hard to come by. Contemplate with right perception, knowing, and view. If you can contemplate in this way, you will attain Dharma before long because no kilesas are coming in. Without contemplation, it becomes 0. With the right contemplation, it's closest to Nibbana. Only becoming Dhammanadhamapatipati is the middle way. That's the way to arrive at the DA process. All the Buddha's teachings of practice are the middle way. If not, it's not the way of the Buddha. 5. Repay the gratitude. katanuta katavedi, is not in the sense of a worldly affair, but by practicing Dhamma and realizing the fruits of the practice. This is also very rare indeed. Repaying the gratitude of one's parents is also very important. The Buddha was warning us of the right time to repay the gratitude. Today, even the Chinese, mainly the younger generation, are increasingly ignoring this important responsibility as human beings. They're influenced by Western views as the sun sets in the Western Hemisphere. For the yogis, first, they have to finish their practices above everything else. As an example, Sariputta never went back after he left his home behind, and only after finishing his practice he went back to repay the gratitude to his mother. The Buddha also. This is the right time to do so because time is precious and dharmanu dharmapatipati chances are very rare to come by in the whole of samsara. The 5 Dullabha Dharmas talk about the 5 kinds of rare things to have. In the Sutta, AN 5-143 Sarandadasuttam, the 500 Lichavas were arguing about the manifestation of 5 gems which are rare in the world. According to them, they are the gems of an elephant, the horse, the jewel, woman, and the steward, etc. Nowadays, for humans, the rare things are quite different. It depends on the defilements. Sunna kappa is the useless ear and mostly beings are in apayas. It's very rare to find someone who can teach what the Buddha had taught. If Dharma exists, then the Buddha still exists. If you do things which he didn't teach, it becomes useless and far from the path and fruit. The Buddha was leaving behind Dharma inheritance for us, and if we're misusing it, we are becoming the same as evil sons and daughters to good parents. There are 3 kinds of listening to Dharma: just for listening, noting with contemplation, and following the instructions and practicing. These are necessary for how to listen to Dharma. Only with the practice, the Dullabha Dharmas of no. 1. No. 2. And no. 3 are to be fulfilled. The Khandha body is showing its anicca to you. If you don't see anicca and instead see nicca, it becomes Dharma but not according to its nature, i.e., anupatipati. You're not practicing in accordance with it. The Khandha is showing its dukkha and you think of it as sukha. The Khandha is showing its asubha and you think of it as subha. For example, it shows its excrement, urine, etc., but you take it as beautiful. Humans too crazy for sexual pleasure, they are chasing for these things of the opposite sex and sometimes even end up with suicide or killing others for these dirty things. Worse than this is the abnormality of homosexuality. Even animals are not interested in it. You'll attain path and fruit only by practicing accordingly to what the Dharma is showing you. It's quite rare to see someone in this situation. If you can practice accordingly, you can attain path and fruit quickly. No. 1. No. 2. And no. 3 could be possible for people, but if you do not fit in with no. 4. You can't get path and fruit. It's clear as the most important point. Mostly, people are doing prayers, puja, instead of practicing rightly. Dharma is showing its anicca and if taken as nicca, then inversion comes in, i.e., wrong perceiving, knowing, and viewing. If you have completed the above 3 points and are lacking this one, no 4, you can't get the path knowledge. This has nothing to do with paramis. We are not looking or observing it correctly. What will happen if it doesn't fit with it? 3 kinds of DA. Process come in or kilesa comes in between them. Even the practitioner can't get it and there is no need to talk about others. For example, on the body dukkha vedana arises and you know it as dukkha vedana and then pay attention to its vanishing. Perceiving and knowing it as dukkha vedana and paying attention to its vanishing. If not like this, what happens to me? It becomes wrong perceiving. You have to contemplate with the right perception, knowing, and viewing. If your contemplation fits these 3 points, you will get Dhamma before long. If not contemplated, it becomes zero. It's not an empty zero. The zero which leads you to apayas. Instead of practicing accordingly, you're practicing incorrectly. Therefore, the Buddha was warning us as if 100,000 humans die and after death no one is reborn in Sugatis. Human beings have a desire to live in the world of rising and vanishing. They don't like the non-arising and non-vanishing. This is referring to the middle way of Dharmanu Dharma Patipati. The Buddha mentioned, it's rare to find someone who understands and repays the gratitude that is due. We should emphasize this as a main factor. We should practice and ensure our own safety first, and then think of others. Sayadaw gave the example of Sariputta to his mom. You should take care of your own matters first, and then address the matters of others. The Buddha was reminding people, whether man or woman, whoever desires for Nibbana must have this kind of spirit. Some Buddhists make vows that are impossible to fulfill. Such as, I will not attain Nibbana until all sentient beings are liberated. It was something like, only after all the oceanic water has been drunk by me and has become empty, then I would attain Nibbana. This goes against the Buddha's teachings.